Have you ever found yourself in an argument where the more you talked, the more you seemed to lose, even though you knew you were right? The other person raises their voice, interrupts, dominates the conversation, and you walk away feeling overpowered. Not because you were wrong, but because you got pulled into their game, emotion, chaos, and impulsive reactions. The truth is, the people who win in those situations aren't smarter, they're just louder. And that's exactly the trap. The more you try to explain, the more control you lose. The more you react, the more you let others dictate your emotions. But what if just one sentence used at the right moment in the right way could completely turn the situation around? If you want to learn how to make others fall into true silence while still maintaining your calm and composure, hit like and follow. Up next are 5 simple yet incredibly sharp responses that can completely change how you handle any argument. The first response is, I don't need to raise my voice to be right. It sounds simple, but this is an incredibly powerful line when you're dealing with someone who tries to dominate by being loud, interrupting, talking over you, or turning the conversation into a power struggle. The problem is, many people instinctively react in those moments by speaking louder, explaining more, and trying harder to prove their point. But the moment they do that, they've already stepped into the exact trap the other person set. At that point, the other person is no longer arguing to find the truth. They just want to control the atmosphere. This sentence helps you step out of that trap without walking away. It sends a very clear message: truth doesn't need noise to stand strong. For example, in a meeting, if you're presenting an idea and a colleague keeps interrupting and talking over you as if the loudest person wins, you don't need to react immediately. Pause for 1-2 seconds, keep your gaze steady, slow your pace, and say, I don't need to raise my voice to be right. Just that one sentence is enough to shift the tone of the conversation and make everyone else notice who is actually losing control. What matters is how you say it. Don't smirk. Don't sound confrontational. Don't turn it into sarcasm. Say it like someone who is fully in control of themselves. As you read this, pause for a few seconds and try saying the sentence out loud once, slowly and firmly. The more you practice it in a calm state, the easier it will come out naturally in real situations. And when you can do that, you're not just stopping others from overpowering you, you're re-establishing your position in the conversation. The second response is, the way you speak says more about you than it does about me. This line is for situations where the other person doesn't attack the issue. They attack you directly through sarcasm, mockery, belittling, or jokes that aren't funny. Their goal isn't to exchange ideas, but to throw you off balance, make you doubt yourself, or push you into a defensive position. The common reaction is to explain yourself, fight back, or prove that you're not what they claim. But the moment you do that, you've unknowingly accepted their rules of the game. A game where you're forced to defend your worth against words that have no real value. This sentence helps you step out of that loop. You don't deny, argue, or counterattack. You simply return responsibility for those words to the person who said them. For example, in a meeting, if someone says something like, "That idea sounds pretty naive," instead of rushing to explain, you can look at them calmly and say, "The way you speak says more about you than it does about me." In that moment, you're no longer arguing, you're holding up a mirror. The key is delivery. Say it as an observation, not an accusation. No emphasis, no raised voice. Right now, think of a recent situation where someone said something that bothered you and mentally rehearse this line in the calmest tone possible. Once you get used to not accepting words that don't deserve your energy, you'll realize something important. The one losing control isn't you. It's the person who can't control how they express themselves. The third response is, we can continue this conversation when there is respect. This isn't just a sentence, it's a boundary. And boundaries are exactly what manipulative people dislike the most. Some conversations aren't really about solving anything. They're traps. The other person keeps interrupting, twisting your words, raising their voice, and the moment you react, they flip it and blame you for creating tension. If you stay in that loop, you're playing by their rules, where your emotions get pulled apart little by little. This sentence breaks that loop completely. For example, when you're discussing something important, and the other person starts making it personal, interrupting or provoking you, instead of explaining, further pause. Take a breath, look at them calmly and say, "We can continue this conversation when there is respect." At that moment, the focus is no longer who's right or wrong, but whether the conversation itself meets the standard to continue. If they keep being disrespectful, they expose themselves. If they adjust their tone, you've reestablished your position. What matters? Don't over-explain. Don't justify why they should be respectful. Don't turn it into a plea. Say it like a condition, not an emotion. Now pause for a moment and ask yourself, when was the last time you got pulled into a draining argument? If you had said this line, then what would have changed? From today on, make a commitment to yourself. Any conversation that lacks respect, you don't continue until the boundary is reset. Save this sentence, practice saying it out loud, and use it the next time you feel yourself being pulled into an unfair game. This isn't avoidance. It's how you take your control back. The fourth response is, I'm not going to continue this conversation. This is a higher level of setting boundaries, not a condition anymore, but a clear ending. And for many people, the hardest part isn't saying it. It's actually following through and stopping. Here's the truth, not every conversation is worth continuing. When the other person isn't listening, has no intention of understanding, and is only trying to win by provoking you, the more you engage, the more energy you lose. Yet many people stay hoping that if I just explain a bit more, they'll understand. In reality, they don't want to understand. For example, when someone keeps targeting you, repeating the same attacks, or pushing you toward an emotional reaction, you'll start to feel heated, irritated, and tempted to respond more strongly. That's your signal. Instead of continuing, pause. Keep your tone neutral. And say, I'm not going to continue this conversation. No explanation, no further argument, no returning to the same loop. The key lies in what you do after saying it. You need to stop responding, change the subject, or remove yourself from the situation. Not get pulled back in by provocation. Right now, think of a recent situation where you stayed too long in an argument. If you had walked away earlier, how much energy would you have saved? Build a simple habit. The next time you feel a conversation going in the wrong direction, remind yourself, it's time to stop. This sentence doesn't make you weak. It shows that you're strong enough not to engage in what isn't worth your energy. The fifth response is, that's your perspective, I respect it, but I don't agree. Not every argument is a conflict, but the problem is some people don't accept differences. They want you to think the way they do. They start by explaining and persuading, then gradually shift into applying pressure. If you don't agree, they see it as wrong or even disrespectful. What's the common reaction? You start debating every single point, trying to prove you're right. But that kind of argument rarely ends because their goal isn't to understand, it's to change you. This sentence helps you stand your ground without escalating the conflict. You acknowledge their right to think, but you don't hand over control of your own thinking. For example, when someone keeps insisting that you should do this, or must choose that, or judges your decision as wrong, you don't need to counter every point. Stay calm and say, that's your perspective. I respect it, but I don't agree. This line closes the argument without damaging the relationship. You're not attacking them, so they have nothing to push back on. But at the same time, you're not giving in. What matters is how you deliver it. Speak slowly and clearly without sounding defensive. Don't add long explanations afterward. Avoid any sarcastic or challenging tone. Right now, think of a situation where someone often tries to impose their views on you. Then say this sentence out loud once in the calmest tone you can. When you get used to respecting others while still holding your ground, you gain something rare: independent thinking without unnecessary confrontation. You may notice something after all these responses. They're not tricks to win against others. They're ways to stop being controlled. Most people enter arguments with the wrong goal: to win, to prove a point, or to be validated. But the moment you need to win, you've already placed your value in someone else's hands. When you feel the need to prove yourself, you're asking for permission to be believed. And when you seek their validation, you've lowered your own position without even realizing it. These lines work not because they're clever, but because they come from a different mindset. I don't need to control others, I control myself. When you don't react the way they expect, you break the script. When you don't get pulled into emotions, you keep your power. And when you know when to speak and when to stop, you become one of the hardest people in the room to manipulate. Over time, this changes everything. People become more careful when they speak to you. Pointless arguments start to fade away, and you no longer carry frustration after every interaction. But none of that happens unless you actually use it. Not just read it and move on. Not just understand it and forget, but apply it in the very next situation. Right after this, choose just one line that resonates with you the most. Save it, practice saying it out loud, and use it in your next interaction. If you want to build a version of yourself that is calmer, sharper, and no longer pulled into meaningless arguments, hit follow and save this. Because change doesn't come from how much you know, but from how much you actually use. And the next time someone tries to pull you into an emotional game, remember, you don't need to win. You just need to stop playing by their rules.